And could I get everyone to please wave at the camera? Awesome, thank you. In spring 2020, the coronavirus disease began scourging in the United States. It sent us into our first lockdown. The world we knew it dramatically changed and life started shifting. Remote workplace began taking place and in-store systems began changing from in-person pickup, you drive in to do your pickups, fast food's different. Life as we know it is very different. And there's one thing that's still influencing our life today. That's online learning. During Florida's first lockdown, online learning gave universities the opportunity to continue our education. Whether you're a University of Florida online student for the pandemic or just because you prefer online education, it's giving us opportunities that we didn't have before. Before diving into my information, please note that I'm regularly going to reference a comparative study. This study discusses student success on online education, which was conducted by Michigan's Virtual University. This was in the early 2000s, so this was right around the time where online classes began developing. You'll hear me reference some other articles and scholarly sources, which will help make sense of these studies' findings. In addition to our scholarly researches, I've been working on the receiving end of online education since 2018. That's allowed me to gain insight into online college from an insider's perspective. So today, let's go ahead and take a look into distant learning, its proven effectiveness, and how students have a personal experience with the platform. Now first, it's important to define online learning and why universities are utilizing this technology. According to onlineschools.org, we can begin tracing the development of online universities back to the late 90s actually. This technology evolved in the workplace and universities began pulling it into their systems for people who didn't have the time, the money to pursue higher education. Since then, online education has proliferated and we've seen lots of different pathways for it, such as hybrid classes, fully online, and so forth. Recently with the pandemic, especially within last semesters, we saw that over 51% of students have now taken an online course in their lifetime. This has a drastic increase from the previous years, where we were only about 20 and 30% that had taken online classes. Needless to say, the pandemic helped bring in this new technology and it's here to stay. It's not only students that are thriving from online education, but even Florida's former governor, Jeff Bush, announced that online learning is the future to our learning. We even see individuals such as Bill Gates fully supporting online education. So there are lots of figures behind this, this idea of reimagining our education and pushing society forward. So I personally enjoy learning more online than in a traditional classroom setting, as you're gaining industry experience without having to leave the classroom. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to discuss a study conducted at the Michigan Virtual University. Researchers took two groups of students from two online classes, and they compared their experiences from online together. So it's very similar to the Canvas modules that we have today, except in these units they used lots of stimulations and graphics and sounds combined in their lectures that were very similar to a shell of a Canvas course, just a little bit more engaging, that provided real life work situations. So these simulations allowed students to demonstrate critical thinking and apply concepts unlike a traditional quiz. So after this semester was done, the researchers started taking notes of what the students thought of the classes and how actively involved they were. In other words, all these students were actively learning, apart from what you might see in a traditional classroom where you're there to sit and listen. There was actually a professor at the University of North Carolina, NC State University, where they said e-learning gives us new methods to deliver information through examinations, explanations, and assignments unlike what you might see in a traditional in-person class. So these innovative technology-based assignments are beginning to shape our critical thinking a little bit more than just sitting and listening to a lecture. It's really a hands-on approach that goes beyond what you might see in a traditional setting. The students, the participants in these two classes, they had very positive experience at the end of the semester. They often stated that the information provided in each module came from a higher caliber than what they traditionally received in in-person classes. It was a lot more detailed, a lot more information packed in a small spot. So this information similarly came from real world experience, which gave them a little more insight into the industry that they were getting themselves into. So although this is great and this is something I enjoy, about 30% of the students did complain that this was too time consuming and too much information to learn. I personally value that in online learning. I think the materials provide us a little bit more insight than what we might traditionally get. It just depends how much time and interest you're willing to dedicate into each class. Some experts do address the potential hazards of online learning, which I'm sure many of you can relate to. A lot of it comes down to learners' isolation, lack of discipline, and self-motivation, all of which are things that you'll struggle with when you're online and you're having to motivate yourself. Online classes require students to stay on top of their material and carve out time for their education. We must remain proactive and take an interest in our courses to be successful online. If we're not interested, we're not going to see the results that you might see when you just have to memorize information and repeat it in a quiz. Online really does require you to be proactive. We had one professor, Mikichi, he stated that students who are motivated to learn, they choose tasks that enhance their learning. So things that they're interested in, they're going to choose those that will enhance their learning. They'll work harder at those tasks, and they'll be persistent in order to gain their goals, achieve their goals. So in other words, as long as you're choosing things that you're interested in and you're pushing towards what you need, you'll be able to have that self-motivation that online learning helps you build. So as we're shifting into an online society, it's important we begin to understand what industry, what place that you best thrive in, whether that's in-person classes or online. In my case, online education is where I see the most opportunities. Although that might look differently than yours, we're all here for the same thing, to achieve our goals within the workspace and achieve our goals within ourselves. It all comes down to satisfaction. So as we move into a digital technology industry and age, I encourage you to keep up with these trends and see what steps you can make to be proactive in your education. All right, does anyone have any questions?
Oh, you can go.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask, what's like the cost difference between online college and like traditional college? Is it like a lot cheaper or?
A lot depends on which state you're in. Thankfully for the University of Florida and Florida in general, everything's very similar online compared to your community colleges. So I took the track of getting my AA immediately out of high school, which immediately cut off 2 years of tuition by itself. And then thankfully with the University of Florida, their in-state tuition for UF Online is the same as my local community college. So it's a very affordable option. This is going to differ for everyone, but for me it worked out very nicely.
I was gonna ask, are you able to like interact with the students in your class, or can you just talk to the teacher?
Right, so a lot of it comes down to discussion boards. I've never had an online class that did not require discussion boards, so that's something each professor will likely utilize. There's not too much communication as far as Zoom connections. This public speaking class is a unique scenario, but the discussion boards do give you a little bit more interpersonal connection than what you might have in just posting your assignments and then leaving it at that.
Gotcha.
So what kind of time commitment does the program itself demand from you?
Right, so I think it goes back to what this study found, stating that a lot of online learning comes to students' self-motivation and their persistence within their education. So you can spend 30 minutes on getting an assignment done, or you can spend 5 hours. It all depends on you, how much you want to put in, what research you're looking for, what caliber of education you're hoping to receive out of it too. Do you have any other questions? All right, well, thank you.